Hey, this is Ryan of Happy Healthy Vegan. Seems like a day can't go by now without someone, some major web publication, nutritionist, whatever, trying to debunk what the health. Well, I just saw this article from British tabloid-based publication Daily Mail, and strangely, they sought out the opinion of New York-based nutritionist Mary Jane Detroyer to do the debunking. And as I'll show here, everything she said is completely wrong. It's misinformation. Furthermore, everything she said was said in the prior debunking I did of Vox magazine, which leads me to think there's some kind of conspiracy going on. Alright, so her first criticism of the movie is that it claims that eating red processed meat causes diabetes. Well, close, but not quite. What the Health, they are really careful to state things very clearly, not only in the movie, but on their website, on the facts page. At the 11-minute mark of the movie, they say that eating red processed meat, just a single modest serving, increases your risk of developing diabetes by 51%. And they provide links to several studies stating just that each 50-gram daily serving of processed meat was associated with an increased risk of diabetes by 51%. Now, what's interesting about this nutritionist's response here is that she cites a study that doesn't dispute the fact that eating red processed meat increases your risk of getting diabetes. Here, this study says your risk is not 51%, but 19%. But still, it's an increased risk. And strangely, this 19% risk study is the same study that Vox magazine pulled out when I debunked them earlier in the week. Well, anyway, let's take a look at that study, because not only did they find an increased risk for diabetes associated with eating red processed meat, they also found an increased risk for coronary heart disease. Further proof that eating processed meat is not particularly healthy for you. Alright, her second criticism is that the film claims that eating 1 egg per day is as bad for you as smoking 5 cigarettes a day. Well, she, like the Vox article person, nutritionist, didn't specify what they meant as bad for you. With regards to what? Like, are we talking lung cancer? How badly your clothes will stink? Emphysema? No. Again, the movie was very specific with regards to bad for you. And here they're talking about bad in terms of life expectancy. But this nutritionist says, for the life of me, I can't understand how they made this correlation. Well, they're just not making this up out of thin air, as she seems to be implying here. The Harvard Nurses Health Study, which covered over 50,000 participants over several decades, were the first to break this news.
The daily consumption of the amount of cholesterol found in just a single egg appeared to cut a woman's life short as much as smoking 25,000 cigarettes, 5 cigarettes a day for 15 years.
Well, as she says, I can't for the life of me understand where they could have gotten that correlation. Well, it's right there in the science. And follow-up studies have found the causal connection here. It's actually plaque buildup in the arteries. They found that as people aged to about 40 years old, as they aged, it was a linear increase. As they got older, the amount of cholesterol just tracked right along. But if you did one of the two following things, smoked cigarettes or ate eggs, that amount of cholesterol, instead of going up linearly, shot up exponentially, smoking and eating eggs. So the study concluded that eating egg yolks is pretty much as bad for your carotid arteries, as far as plaque buildup goes, as smoking is. Yet, this nutritionist can't for the life of her figure out where they got this correlation from. Then she goes on to make the wild claim that for those in the lower income brackets, eggs are a very important source of cheap, low-cost protein. Like, come on, like you couldn't get protein from things that are even cheaper, like plants. Like, yes, all plants contain protein. I know that blows most people's minds. And in fact, some of the most protein-dense, rich sources of foods are plant foods. So there's no excuse. You don't need to eat eggs to get cheap protein. That is just complete BS nonsense information. And you should know this, Miss Nutritionist. All right, her third criticism, which Vox also had too, was that the filmmakers only spoke with medical doctors who shared their point of view. And again, this is complete rubbish misinformation. The filmmakers went out of their way to seek medical doctors who were not vegan to present them with the facts, the medical facts about plant-based diets. Here, they found the chief scientific and medical officer of the American Diabetes Association. So let's see how this conversation went down with this medical doctor who did not share the filmmaker's point of view.
You actually could potentially cure or reverse diabetes with a purely plant-based diet.
I don't believe there's sufficient evidence to demonstrate that.
Again, the With the Health website provides plenty of evidence here supporting their point of view. Well, let's see how this medical doctor responded when presented with such evidence.
Like, the NIH, in Europe, the European Association of Diet.
So there you go. The American Diabetes Association's top doctor did not want to discuss points of view that were differing from his own and his organization's points of view. In fact, this is the only doctor that responded. The filmmakers reached out to many doctors in these various health organizations, and none wanted to talk to the filmmakers. I wonder why. Her fourth and final criticism is that the movie resisted exploring actual scientific topics in depth. And again, that's just complete BS. The movie went out of their way to clearly explain what causes diabetes. It's not carbohydrates, it's intracellular fat. Anyway, I read a little bit more to see what she's getting at, and she was complaining about how the movie talked about toxic water and how fish are toxic, and she disagrees with that. She tells her clients to eat natural fish, whatever that means, and for her that means fish that were not raised on farms. However, the Scripps Institute of Oceanography study here shows that toxic pollutants are found now in fish in all the world's oceans. Yeah, there's nowhere safe to go. So her advice, telling her clients, avoid farm-raised fish, but eat wild fish, well, that advice is just dangerous and irresponsible. And next, she gets downright silly. She says the same water that the fish are swimming in, seawater, is the same water that's being used to water our tofu. Like vegans are just eating tofu. Anyway, that's just complete nonsense comparing tofu to fish. As far as what makes fish toxic, it's the bioaccumulation of toxins in the water that ends up in fish. Tofu does not have such bioaccumulation. So she says the movie is irresponsible and negatively impacts large groups of people, namely those with disordered thoughts about food, giving them more reason not to eat. Like, are you kidding? Where are you pulling this out of? Are you just making this up? If you had watched the movie, nowhere did it say, yeah, food is horrible, don't eat it. Yeah, if anything, it's saying don't eat certain foods, the ones that cause disease, the ones that certain, health organizations want you to keep eating, doctors, this whole system that's in place to recommend foods that make you sick. Yeah, don't eat those foods, but if we're talking about plant foods, whole food plants, you can eat all of them. That's not the message is not to stop eating food. That's complete silliness, misinformation. And secondly, she points out those in lower income brackets on food stamps, and they might be totally confused and not know what to eat. Well, if you're in that situation, you're in good luck because the cheapest foods in the world are plants. What is cheaper than go down to the market and get a giant sack of potatoes for like $5? It'll last you weeks, if not a month. Giant sacks of rice too. Legumes, bananas for fruit. These are some of the cheapest foods you can find. If you know a cheaper way to exist, let me know down in the comments below. And lastly, I want to point out how incredibly suspicious it is that the 4 points that this nutritionist brought up to criticize the movie are the same 4 points that the prior debunking article I did on Vox magazine, that nutritionist used as well. What are the odds of that? Right down to like in the diabetes debunking, what the health filmmakers are saying it's a 51% increased risk if you have if you eat one serving of processed meat. Well, these nutritionists here are saying no, it's only a 19% increased risk. What are the odds of them both knowing that study but being completely unaware of the study that shows the risk is 51%, and right down to all the other 3 points too that I outlined here, which leads me to believe there's something going on here. The meat and dairy industry are reaching out. They're sending their talking points to these nutritionists who will repeat the misinformation. How can it be that they're saying the same thing, the same same exact information. They're not being original. They're just going down the list one by one, repeating the misinformation from the meat and dairy lobbies. Anyway, let me know what you think down below. What do you think of this nutritionist points? What do you think of this potential conspiracy? And it's not crazy. I've had prior videos where I've shown that there are people being paid, just regular video makers like me and bloggers and vloggers and nutritionists by meat and dairy lobbyists to promote their points of view. So it sure smells like that here because they are scared. The meat and dairy industries are scared, obviously, by all the sudden influx of misinformation following the release of What the Health on Netflix. So let me know what you think. Like this video if you like these debunkings, if you like how I think I'm onto something here. I'm going to try to find more debunkers and see if they have the same 4 or 5 points. So let me know you want to see more of these. Comment about that too. And until next time, ignore all this bull-blowing. Keep it carb, baby. Keep it carb.